Welcome, Dolphins fans, haters, and everyone in between to your favorite show, discussing the greatest franchise in sports, the Miami Dolphins. This is the PhinsPod. My name is Moose, your host, and the Dolphins continue to wheel and deal. They sent last offseason's addition, Ereck Flowers, back to Washington, where we had signed him from, but the deal did not appear to be nearly as good for the team as initially expected. We'll get into that, as well as try to decipher all of the leaks which started dropping throughout the day. Various news outlets started reporting things regarding the Dolphins and their draft agenda. So what is that agenda? And since it is bullshit season, we have to look very closely at all the reports and see if there's smoke billowing from anywhere. So we're going to get into all of that, and let's dive in.
We've been playing a lot of the dark arts today. Been some really just wild Dolphin stuff that's been out there in the national media. First, you had this Mike Florio, who's just stirring the pot with his pro football talk, basically saying, can't rule out the Dolphins taking a quarterback at number 6. Even though, Chris Greer, Brian Flores have been saying two is their guy now for about 7 press conferences in a row. Just like Kyle Shanahan can't rule out that we're all going to meet our peril on Sunday. Some things you just can't rule out. And Skip Bayless, he came in off the top rope, and he agrees Dolphins should take a quarterback at 6. Called Tua a soft thrower. Now we turn to another member of the dark arts. This guy, he goes over, he stirs up the witch's brew of dark arts on takes, and this is old flippy flopper Colin Cowherd. Now, mind you, this man participated and sat down for the Tua documentary that is now nominated for an Emmy. Ergo was part of Tua propaganda, Tua-ganda. And he is now deciding, flipping my take.
So the day started with a pretty big trade. Ian Rappaport reported, say that 5 times fast, that the Washington football team had agreed to acquire lineman Ereck Flowers from the Dolphins in exchange for a swap of late draft picks. So at first the move looked pretty good, pretty honestly amazing. Flowers was brought in last year to a pretty big deal, 3 years at $30 million total, so $10 million a year. And although he had revitalized his career after being a first-round bust with the Giants, playing at tackle initially, so he came to Washington and kicked inside to guard and proved that, he could play and play pretty well. So the Dolphins projected him to be a lot better than what he ended up showing last year, especially at that price tag, right? $10 million a year. It's a little pricey for a guard, especially one that's more mediocre to above average, instead of, above average to good. So clearly, as we saw that bear out this last season, he was just not overly impressive for the Dolphins, especially again at that price point. So moving him out and then saving all that cap space, initially reported at $8 million, which could be used to sign most of the draft class, that was great. It's, considering where the Dolphins are right now, pretty up against the cap. It just seemed honestly too good to be true, and it was, because Washington knew Miami was looking to dump that bloated contract, so they made a deal. And it was later reported that day by Adam Schefter that in order to get this trade done, Miami had to restructure Ereck Flowers' contract, in which they paid him a $6 million signing bonus. So while Washington instead would just pick up the tab for $3 million in base salary. So they pay $3 million, the Dolphins pay $6 million. So initially we thought we were saving $8 million a year. It was only $2 million. So the Dolphins are saving $2 million this season. And then of course the Washington football team will take on the brunt of the contract, probably negotiate it, and I'm pretty sure there's an out after next year. So the Dolphins are pretty much paying off all that's really guaranteed. The Dolphins did get the better of the 2 7th-round picks. Not that it matters much, moving from 258 to 244th. So what can we really conclude kind of from this trade overall? And from a team building perspective, the Dolphins clearly felt that they wanted to find a cheaper and likely younger replacement for Flowers, who, although is seasoned and pretty adequate at playing guard, he's just limited athletically and, his overall position flexibility. You can't trust him in a pinch to go play tackle game in, game out for you, if one of the tackles goes down. And I think the Dolphins are clearly liking guards and tackles who show some flexibility, as we're seeing with Robert Hunt, right? He can play both positions, and he did. So personally, I do wish that the Dolphins took on more than $2 million in savings, right? After spending $6 million to appease the trade and get it done, right? At least split up the money that right between the two. They're getting a player. It's not like Washington isn't getting anything. They're getting a potential starter. So instead, they just pay him $3 million and the Dolphins pay $6 million. Would have been at least nicer if they each split it up $4 million, so the Dolphins at least save $4 million. But hey, again, savings are savings, and at least the Dolphins identified an issue and got rid of it. Instead of kind of holding on to it and hopes, hey, well, we're paying him this much, we might as well keep him. The Greer accepting the mistake and getting rid of it, I think that is a good thing. That's a better philosophy to have, and not one that the Dolphins of past have had. So the team now, looking at the Dolphins' offensive line, has even less depth on the interior of the offensive line across the board. So it makes it all the more apparent that they're going to be looking high in the draft to find a starter. It was also reported by Adam Beasley of the Miami Herald that the Dolphins were going to be kicking Robert Hunt inside from right tackle to right guard. Remember, he finished last season as right tackle, and that's where he played mostly in college. But as an athlete and how he projects to play at guard, I love this move. Hunt is so much better to play that position and play inside. He's a mauler, right? And he works best in small spaces where he can engage with defenders quickly, get to that strike point fast, and not have to deal with these really athletic, lanky, tall guys who are going to bend right around him. Now, in these small, tight spaces, he can engage with the defenders and use his immense power and base to drive them back. He just isn't quick enough or agile, to play tackle at a high level consistently, in my personal opinion. And we saw that when, he jumped outside last year. So at guard, though, he can really settle in, and you can really establish, a good core in the offensive line with Solomon Kindley, Austin Jackson if he develops, and now Robert Hunt at guard. But it does leave some, holes. Center, right now it's Matt Skura, and then right tackle appears to be DJ Fluker now. And so clearly you need to address those positions in the draft. Maybe one of them ends up starting. If I had to guess, I think Skura is likelier. Although, Fluker has started everywhere he's been. But I don't really want him starting onto his blind side. That doesn't feel like the offensive line has really upgraded much. So it should indicate that the Dolphins are going to hopefully go right tackle or center early in the top 50 picks of this draft. And then reports started flooding out of Miami too from seemingly legitimate sources, one from the Miami Herald and then the other from Pro Football Talk. And so when I say legitimate, I don't mean good sources. I mean, if it's being reported by someone of importance, right? Miami Herald, if they're going to report something, it doesn't have to be true. Most of the time, these reports that come out this week aren't, but it means that they heard it from somewhere legitimate, meaning that whoever's saying it is pushing some form of agenda. Same thing goes for Pro Football Talk. So although these reports aren't true, you should still look at them, because if you go back and look at sort of the narratives that were being spun, before last year's draft, it's clear that they were pushing away from what ended up happening. So, obviously it's harder to determine what's going to happen based on one report, but you can at least be like, all right, if the smoke is pointing to this direction, then maybe that's not actually what's going on here, because it's rare unless you have the top 1, 2, 3, the top couple picks. Everyone knows who you're taking. But after that, unless you're a very poorly run franchise, it's locked down. So no one knows who these franchises are taking. So these reports have to be taken with that grain of salt. So that first report from the Miami Herald stated that with the trade of Ereck Flowers now, the Dolphins would be interested in taking a top flight offensive lineman at pick 6. And so once this report came out, the more confident I became that Penei Sewell is not going to be a Dolphin. We're going to assume here that, unlike the Gase administration, Flores has a lid on his operation. From the coaching staff, from the front office, all of them. They've clearly shown that things don't leak. We've seen that over the last few seasons now. And if you recall last year, Greer pulled off a masterclass in draft smokescreen manipulation that led right up to the draft night. Albert Breer was reported he couldn't find anyone in the league who thought the Dolphins were going to take Tua Tagovailoa. Clearly, they had a plan and executed that plan very well. And I would hope that they're going to do that again. So give him his respect and assume that these reports are out here for a purpose. So why would Miami want teams thinking that they're going to take an elite offensive lineman at 6, right? There's a couple possibilities. And of course, in the comments, feel free to float them if you think that there's a specific reason, or if you think I'm completely wrong and Penei Sewell is going to be the pick now. But what I think is most likely the case is Miami's negotiating with a team behind them for a swap, for a trade, or at least the deals are being put on the table, the parameters for if a certain situation happens, what that trade could look like. Right now, that's what's happening. Teams aren't creating all brand new trades night of the draft. They've talked. They know sort of what the expectations are. So my guess is right now the Dolphins are in that negotiation with the team, and there's a standstill, right? The Dolphins, hypothetically, we'll say it's Denver. Denver wants to move up from 9 to 6 and see how much it would cost. if Justin Fields falls there, Trey Lance falls there. And Miami's like, look, we want a first, or, we want 2-2s, whatever. Something that Denver's like, no. We're not going to do that. Because Miami wants to create the narrative that they're completely fine with staying put and taking an elite tackle prospect, right? That makes the team behind them likely wanting to move up if Denver wants that quarterback, needing to pay more to ensure that they get their guy because they're losing leverage in the negotiation, right? Right now, every team that Miami's talking to knows that Miami benefits from dropping back and then still getting a skill player, which is clearly their need, or a valuable offensive lineman. So they don't have any player that they really need at pick 6, and everyone knows that. So when they're negotiating with Miami, clearly they're like, hey, we know you want to move. We're not going to give you, 2 firsts. That's crazy. So Miami needs to adjust that narrative. Miami could drop a few spots back, gain assets, and get a great value player, right? I know a lot of you don't want it, but if Kyle Pitts is gone and Jamar Chase is gone and the Dolphins are sitting there at 6 and they're like, all right, yeah, we have Penei Sewell, but we also have 2 quarterbacks on the board that other teams are thirsty for. Why don't we fall back, still get a Christian Darrisaw or maybe even a Rashawn Slater, hell, Jaylen Waddle if you only drop back, 4 or 5 spots, and then you can still get a boatload of picks. But the problem is other teams know that that's the thinking in Miami. So the Dolphins wanting to take that power back, right? They'll say it at Denver at 9, Minnesota at 14, even Chicago back at 20, right? Screw your shitty deal. We're going to stay right here at 6, and we're going to leak all these reports that we're happily going to take Penei Sewell, a dominant force. Oh, and did you also happen to hear that we traded away one of our linemen days before the draft? That sells the narrative even harder, in my opinion. The Dolphins could have made this move, a couple weeks ago. You don't think that, they knew their plans with Ereck Flowers 2 weeks ago? No? Why did it happen this week? There's clearly a reason for that. And also, the same day, Robert Hunt gets moved inside. There's clearly a hole now at right tackle. Oh, my God, there's a tackle there who's going to be available at 6, at least a few of them. So, now that you think about it, it really makes sense. Like, oh, wow, they're setting everything up to take a tackle. And that's what they want other teams to also think. Because now they're like, shit, that we need to go up and get our guy. And we've been playing hardball with the Dolphins, but they might be just as happy taking Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater. So, damn, okay, Miami, fine. We'll throw in that extra mid-rounder, or we'll throw in that whatever thing that was holding the deal from being done. So it would just adjust the parameters so that come draft night, when they're having that negotiation and Penei Sewell sitting there and they say, we love this guy, we're going to take him. There's been a whole narrative spun by the media and the press leading up to it. Oh, and also, trading Ereck Flowers and that whole deal really will help benefit the Dolphins and help equal the playing field for them come draft night. So honestly, I've talked myself into it. I think the Dolphins are not going to be taking Penei Sewell at 6 because of everything that we've been hearing. The other report which dropped came from Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk. He said that he's been hearing across the league that the Dolphins actually prefer Jaylen Waddle over Jamar Chase, let alone Devonta Smith. And now, don't get me wrong, I do think Jaylen Waddle is actually an excellent fit for Miami. He can play in the slot, has familiarity with Tua, and look, he has great physical tools, which can translate well to the next level. Super explosive, and mainly that tool is speed. But what he offers in terms of that speed dynamic, that can be had later in the draft, right? And the value at 6 doesn't make a ton of sense to take Jaylen Waddle when, again, like we just spoke of, you could trade back and still get him. So this report likely comes from another team, or maybe Florio is just like reporting on some NFL executive who's spitballing to him over the phone. And again, it makes sense, the Dolphins having Tua and that relationship with Waddle already built in. Maybe other teams around the league just are guessing that maybe the Dolphins prefer Jaylen Waddle. But frankly, Jamar Chase being a better prospect than Waddle, I just don't see that. There's no way. Chase is a better route runner. He's got better hands, stronger at the catch point, more physical when dealing with handsy corners. Honestly, like I said, the only thing Waddle has over Chase is that speed, and it's not even by a crazy margin, right? And I don't know who really benefits from this report being out. Unlike the other report regarding the Dolphins taking Sewell, where you can kind of be like, okay, maybe someone here benefits. I'm having a tough time really figuring out why the Dolphins would want that to be the case if it's not true, right? Maybe it's just a desperate Hail Mary attempt from Miami themselves to try to lower Chase's value, right? In hopes that maybe Cincinnati won't take him and he falls to us at 6. I don't know if you've seen the movie Draft Day with Kevin Costner. I rewatched it. Highly recommend. Definitely gets you in the mood for the NFL draft. But that sort of happened when the Browns sort of passed on someone. People were like, whoa, something must be wrong with them. So maybe this is, again, like a Hail Mary attempt to make the Bengals second guess taking Chase so that he falls to them, being like, hey, why do the Dolphins, maybe Waddle is better. Maybe the Dolphins know that another team also really likes Waddle, and by expressing a lot of interest in Waddle, it would, up that trade value, make a team jump up. I don't know. It's a little bit more cloudy than the previous report. But looking ahead, I don't think this is going to be the end of reports coming out of Miami. There's probably going to be a bunch as the day that you hear this. So on Wednesday and probably draft day itself. A lot of chatter regarding what the Dolphins' plans are, who they like, who they don't like, the position direction they're going in, a lot of stuff. And it's going to all sound legitimate, but when you all kind of piece it together, it's going to be kind of contradictory. So we're going to see, because other than Chris Grier himself, no other individual entity knows what the plan is going to be come draft night. And that's exactly what you want for your team. As frustrating as it is to see all these reports and fans are getting all frustrated. Like, what? Don't believe it. Just have faith in your team. And if you don't have faith in Chris Grier and what he's building and the direction of this franchise, then I can't help you. Then be worried, be nervous. But if you like the direction and like the decisions being made, then have faith that they know what they're doing, right? So when no other team is also able to decipher your true intentions, like we saw last year too, then you can come to that negotiating table with none of your cards laid out. Miami's going to be able to move up and down as they please, and then they have other teams just guessing at who they're eyeing. And if I know one thing, it's that we have no idea what's going to go down Thursday, April 29th. But all we can hope for and expect from our club is that they make aggressive and opportunistic moves to improve this football team. We suffered through 2019 together, and we felt the hope of what this team could be under the leadership of Brian Flores in 2020 with a season that surpassed a lot of our expectations. I know mine. Obviously, you hope to see the team there soon, but they got there a lot quicker. So now it's time to lock and load. This draft could be the secret weapon for the future of Tua and the entire offense. We know what we need. We saw the holes. And this draft could really be the place where the Dolphins fill them for a serious run going forward. And again, the offensive side of the ball does need that boost of talent when it does come to Thursday night and Friday night, especially in the top, 2-3 rounds. You hope that the Dolphins focus on the offensive side of the ball. I am so excited.
Who do you like out of those for the Dolphins, and how much, if it is Jamar Chase, could he elevate this offense?
Well, let me say something about the Bengals and something I hear. I hear there's certain people in that building that want Penei Sewell, and maybe Coach Zach Taylor and quarterback Joe Burrow want the wide receiver and Jamar Chase, who he played with at LSU. So there's an interesting split there. I would take Sewell if I were the Bengals. And if I'm the Dolphins and they do take Chase, I'm taking Sewell here and not Chase, obviously, because he'd be gone. I think you get the big people. There's only so many giant players on this planet who can play offensive line and play it well in the NFL. So I get the attraction to Jamar Chase. I get it from Miami's standpoint. I get it from the Bengals standpoint. But this is a deep receiver class. And you're talking about 20, 25 receivers who are going to be contributors in the NFL. And there's a lot of fast guys as well. I would take the big guy. I've said it all along. I think Christian Darrisaw will be the best tackle in this class. That's probably who I would take. But if I'm the Bengals or the Dolphins, I'd take Penei Sewell over Jamar Chase.
That's going to do it for us here today. Thank you guys so much for listening to the PhinsPod. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you also to Timothy Ritchie, member of the pod and supporter of the show on our Patreon. If you guys also want to support the show, check that out. Links in the description, or head to patreon.com/PhinsPod. Thank you all so much for the support, and please remember to like the video if you enjoyed the show and are watching on YouTube, and subscribe wherever it is that you're listening, just so you never miss a chance to chat about your Miami Dolphins. Remember that the PhinsPod's available on all platforms: Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, and of course, YouTube. Continue the conversation with us over on Twitter and Instagram @PhinsPod, and I hope you all have an amazing day, and until next time, stay safe. One more sleep. Love y'all.